Welcome back to the last word. We got our weekend picks as usual. Week 15 in the NFL, and of course, the annual Army Navy game, which we're going to pick right now. So, we're actually going to both stick with Army in this one. Army's still ranked 22nd. Navy, obviously, of course, not ranked at this point. To be honest, I mean, these games are always kind of they're interesting. It's weird. It is a tradition. You obviously have two distinct playing styles compared to the rest of college football. Um, I mentioned this right before I started recording. I didn't think the Army would beat Notre Dame, but I thought the game would be better than Navy's game against Notre Dame, and a 2 point difference in the final score. But besides that, Army's last game was against Tulane. That was in the conference championship for them. They beat them 35-14. Navy, on the other hand, just a few weeks ago, got 35-0 by Tulane. So at the end of the day, I do think Army's still clearly a better team. And this one, personally, I probably would take. It's hard to take the spread in this one, but I probably would take a 7 point victory, 6 7 point victory for Army.
Yeah, I mean, this one is it's kind of a funny one. I think it's always a kind of a cool game that happens, but it's definitely a weird one to pick because of the way that they play. It really does come down to Army did very marginally better against Notre Dame, and they were able to beat Tulane 35-14, whereas Navy lost 35-0. Um, and all three of Navy's losses came in the last week of the season. I feel like they've been kind of stumbling a little bit. I trust Bryson Daly a little more as a runner. Horvath is the better passer stat wise, but I do think that Bryson Daly is going to be a little too much for Navy. I think they'll be prepared for each other. Obviously, they do this every year and they play the exact same way. But I think I'm going to take probably Army with the spread in this one. Feels like a pretty safe pick. Um, cool that Army made it this far, still ranked. I think this could be still a battle. I think they could still really be close to each other, but I do think that Army gets it by at least a full score.
Yeah, those games always, considering we don't have too many games. I mean, it's the only game this weekend. In this little intermission here between the end of the season, and the bowl games. Always not to have this little tradition here between the two teams. And we move into the NFL with the Bills and Lions. And I'll say this again, NFL having Bills, Lions, Steelers, Eagles at the same time, rough. I definitely have to have one on the tablet, one on the computer, or one on the TV, something like that. But with the first game, Bills, Lions. Bills last week had that crazy game against the Rams, who won a disgusting game against the Niners just last night. They lost that game 44-42, maybe some decisions at the end that were kind of bad. Lions have won 11 straight. Realistically, they're probably the best team in the NFL right now. And I think that continues. Bills, I don't want to say they're slipping or anything. I mean, they just lost their first game in a while, and they still put up 40 something points. But I think the Lions, they continue that role, get a good win. And even with this being an AFC NFC matchup, so not really going to be too big for either team in their respective conference standings. Still a huge game because it's a potential Super Bowl preview.
Yeah, big, potential Super Bowl preview. Definitely kind of like a for the love of the game kind of game, right? This isn't really going to impact either their playoff chances too much, especially because the Bills dropped that game to the Rams last week. They kind of pushed them out of the race for the 1 seed, so now they kind of get to just coast and play football. Um, I think this would be a great one. I'm going to take the Lions here as well. I think they've just been super, super on fire. They've been, I mean, genuinely like unstoppable. They played a lot of close games, right? They should have lost the Bears game. They probably could have lost that Packers game. They beat up the Colts, almost the whole AFC South, but they struggled with the Jags or the sorry, whoa, no, they did not. They beat the Jaguars 52-6. They struggled with the Texans just a little bit, but for me, I think there's nothing against the Bills here. They put up 42 points in their loss against the Rams. I just feel like this is kind of like unstoppable force meets immovable object, and for me, I think the Lions just come out on top, probably the same way they've come out in their other big games, like a 3 point victory. I would not be surprised if there's some sort of like Dan Campbell tomfoolery at the end, or some sort of fake that leads to a field goal, and the Bills lose this by three. Not a costly loss for them, but definitely one to look out for as you think about the potential of these two teams meeting up in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, so that's gonna be a good one, and this one should be as well. Steelers, Eagles again. And this is a potential Super Bowl matchup in its own right as well.
Yeah.
Eagles, they've been on a roll, of course. They've won how many ever games in a row at this point? I mean, it's like nine, I think. So I mean, pretty much since they came back from that bye, they've been going crazy. Steelers, they avenged their loss against the Browns this past Sunday. I and both of us, we're gonna go with the Steelers in this one. And unlike, what I said about the Bills, I don't think the Bills are slipping. Even though the Eagles are on that win streak, I think the Eagles are starting to show a little bit of cracks. They had that game against the Panthers, who clearly are not the worst team in the NFL at this point. They've been a whole lot better. I mean, they've had multiple chances now to win close games against good teams the past few weeks. So obviously not the same Panther team, but I think that connection, obviously with AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts, that's been a whole thing in the media this week. Not the only receiver issue with a respected NFC team, but I do think the Eagles are starting to show a little bit of slippage here. Steelers, they came back, got that good revenge game against the Browns. They've been mostly on a roll. I think the Steelers continue, pull out this win.
Yeah, for me, this is the Steelers defense is a hard thing to look away from, and the Eagles struggled against the Panthers defense, which is definitely not the stronger part of our team. Um, I don't think that the Eagles are a bad football team. I don't think that a loss to the Panthers would have been that telling of what their kind of outlook would be. But I do feel like it's time for them to drop one. I've been saying that for weeks. So Eagles fans rejoice. I picked against you again. That has not gone well in a while. So maybe I've cursed the Steelers here. But it just feels like Steelers offense has very explosive capability, and that defense helps that a lot because they can get the offense the ball at the 5. So I just feel like with the way the Eagles have been playing, maybe the stuff in the locker room, coming off of a few almost losses. This is not a team you want to have an almost lost against. So I think it will just turn into a loss. So I feel like the Steelers get this one. Just a grittier team, a little tougher. Maybe if they match up in the Super Bowl, the Eagles would be more in their A game. But right now, regular season, Mike Tomlin's in his prime form. I think they take this one with a little bit of a defensive standoff here.
But yeah, like I said, man, I think this one's going to be a pretty good one. We both mentioned it's a possible Super Bowl matchup. So two good games at the same time, unfortunately, 4 o'clock this Sunday. And then the Sunday night game, no slouch either. We got Packers and Seahawks. We're actually going to split on this one. I was going to go Packers. And look, the Packers, I mean, two of their losses this season are against the Lions. So, I mean, it's not as if Packers have been losing to bum teams. Um, the Lions, I just said, I think are the best team in the NFL. Seahawks have been on a roll though. They've won their last 4 games. Their last loss was about a little over a month ago in OT to the Rams, who are also pretty good right now. And the Seahawks, I mean, that defense, they've been doing their thing. 17 points against the Niners, 6 points against the Cardinals, 18 points against the Cardinals again, and then 21 against the Jets. So the defense has been doing their thing, and at points that offense has been able to do pretty well. And I think, look, at the end of the day, I do think the Packers will probably end up being a better team at the end of the season. But right now, I think the Seahawks are on too much of a roll. And maybe the Packers might be ruined a little bit after that loss to the Lions, even though it was a close game that perhaps they should have won.
Yeah, I think this one is a pretty big matchup. I think it'll be fun. The Packers have definitely been a trustable team. 3 of their losses are to their division, which is tough. That division is really hard. Their first loss was to the Eagles down there in Brazil at the start of the season. I think the Seahawks have definitely been on fire. I do think this game will be a lot closer than people are maybe thinking. The spread is 2.5 points, so maybe people are aware of it. The Seahawks are good. They've been rolling. That defense has been rolling. This Packers offense is definitely the hardest one in the past few weeks. Kind of healthy and at their prime, but they've had to slow down. And I think that's really all it's going to be. I think they've been on a roll, but this is going to be a tougher offense to take hold of. And the Packers defense has also been pretty solid. I think that they're kind of combining those two factors here. The Seahawks will come in and probably put on a good performance and just get stopped on a crucial late down, and Packers will come away with a close one. So I don't think it'll be a blowout. They blew out the Niners and Dolphins and survived against the Bears a few weeks ago. But I do not think that they'll blow out the Seahawks here. I think this will be a battle. Just think the Packers come out with a slight edge here, stealing the victory in Seattle.